Kids today are growing up in a world where AI just answers everything confidently and immediately. It's almost like a magic
Mm,
word machine.
yeah, it's crazy how these responses come out so polished, It seems to have no hesitation at all.
Right. And what's really interesting is that these answers carry an authoritative tone, regardless of whether they're accurate or
Yep.
not. We don't hear an I'm not entirely sure anywhere.
Exactly. And that's what really worries me. When answers are served so confidently, how are kids learning to question the stuff?
Yeah, that's a huge concern. Kids growing up with something that always presents a firm answer might miss out on developing that natural
Yeah.
skepticism. They might just take it all at face value.
So, you're saying that the problem isn't necessarily the accuracy of the AI's response, but the perception of it? It feels like we're getting experts on standby, even when they're not.
Exactly. See, the models are pattern matching engines. They spit out what sounds statistically likely without truly understanding, and that means a confident delivery of what can sometimes be, well, complete nonsense.
Yeah, right. That makes sense. It's like when you ask something and it doesn't show any signs of uncertainty, making it look like an infallible oracle.
Absolutely, and that creates this dangerous disconnect. Adults, by experience, learn to double check and be a bit skeptical. But kids, they might just assume if it sounds so sure, it must be true.
Uh huh. I mean, it's the essence of critical thinking, right? Questioning, probing, asking, how do I know this is true? But if the AI always provides a smooth, reasonable answer, they lack that friction to learn from errors.
Exactly. Critical thinking comes from friction, like checking your homework and realizing you got a mistake, then learning from it. If the AI gives a perfect, well rounded answer every time, that friction gets erased.
Yep. And that friction is one of the most valuable tools a person can have. It's part of building resilience and understanding, not just absorbing information passively.
Right, and here's an interesting thought. What if instead of treating AI as an unquestionable answer key, we teach kids to use it as a partner, something
Mhm.
they need to work through themselves?
I like that idea. Instead of just copying an answer, they could say, explain it back to someone, or even challenge it. It forces them to really process what they're learning.
Exactly. Like when I build AI on the weekends, I know what's under the hood. I understand that it's a pattern matching engine trained on heaps of human text, not some sentient
Right.
genius. And that's the nuance kids need to grasp.
So essentially, it's not about distrusting AI entirely, but using it wisely as a starting tool rather than a final authority.
Yes, exactly. I mean, it's useful for sparking ideas and structuring thoughts. But if you let it do all your thinking, you're outsourcing your intellectual work.
I get that. And it's a subtle line, too. On one hand, you want kids to embrace technology, but on the other, you need them to develop their own judgment, right?
Absolutely. You see, when the AI always provides that smooth, confident answer, it kind of lulls you into a false sense of security. There's no visible gap where uncertainty might signal that, hey, double check this.
Exactly. It's kind of like having a friend who always tells you they're 100% sure, but then maybe you're missing some behind the scenes debate. It doesn't encourage you to ask, wait, are you sure about this? How do you know?
Right? And that's why I start asking my kids to, explain back what the AI said to them,
Yeah,
not to check if they're right, but to see if they've actually internalized the explanation.
that sounds like a solid strategy. It ensures they're not just copying without comprehension. They have to process the answer and, in doing so, cultivate that critical instinct.
Exactly. And it combats a sort of passive acceptance that could develop over time. If they always passively accept the AI's outputs without us thinking through them, then eventually the tool starts deciding their thoughts.
Right? Which is a dangerous path because, independent thought is what fuels creativity and understanding. Without skepticism, we're basically delegating our critical faculties.
Precisely. And here's a challenge I sometimes hear, but the AI is so useful, why not just let it guide us? And I say, look, if you lose the ability to question because you're relying on AI for every answer, then you're in a sense outsourcing your mind.
Absolutely. I see what you mean, but isn't it also possible that over time, kids might learn to discern even subtle uncertainties? I mean, could they not learn from patterns which answers require scrutiny, even if it's not obvious at first glance?
Well, that's an interesting point, but I think it starts with developing that foundational habit of questioning.
Hmm.
If they are never forced to experience the friction of being wrong, they might never build up that habit robustly, you know?
True, I get that. Younger minds, especially, need that muscle to be trained early on. It's like exercising. You don't build strength if you never challenge yourself.
Exactly. And even though I build AI myself on weekends, which gives me some insight into how it actually works, I worry that the average user, especially youth, won't have that behind the scenes understanding.
Yes. So then, it's not about demonizing AI, but about promoting a healthy, skeptical relationship with technology. Kind of like how we treat tools, they're there to serve us, not to think for us.
Right. It's about using AI as a tool, a catalyst for thought, not as a stand in for
Yep.
that thought. It's all about balance.
And that's where critical thinking really plays a fundamental role. It reminds us to always double check and play devil's advocate, even against seemingly flawless machines.
Yeah, a kind of built in check that comes from being exposed to friction, experiencing failure, then correcting, and ultimately learning.
Exactly.
That's what builds true intelligence.
I like this idea of using friction as a learning mechanism. It reminds me of the old school methods where you learn so much from making mistakes and then having to correct them,
Absolutely. And if we erase that friction with AI always giving smooth answers, then the whole process of learning to think critically is at risk.
right? It's like having a calculator that never shows any work. You get the answer, but you never learn the process behind it.
That's a perfect analogy. And remember, my kids are being taught to re explain answers. It isn't about validating homework, but ensuring the thought process is there.
Yeah, for sure. Which means they're, in a way, actively engaging with the material. They're forced to take ownership of their learning instead of just outsourcing it.
Exactly. Ensuring that AI remains a thinking partner and not an authority
Right.
figure. Because once you start treating it like an oracle, you lose the chance to really grow that independent reasoning.
And in today's world, where information is at our fingertips, fostering that kind of inherent skepticism and active learning is absolutely essential. I mean, it's not just about AI, it's about understanding the world critically.
Couldn't have said it better. It's a call for balance. Embrace the helpfulness of AI, but always keep the critical edge sharp.
Uh huh. A balance that might just be the key to nurturing a generation that's both technologically savvy and thoughtfully inquisitive.
Exactly. And hopefully, as more educators, parents, and tech builders recognize this need, we'll see a shift towards using AI as a tool for growth rather
Right.
than a crutch.
Here's to hoping that the next generation doesn't surrender their critical thinking skills to machines. Instead, they harness AI to expand their minds.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, intelligence is about questioning, learning from friction, and not just accepting elegant answers at face value.
Yeah, well said. And I think that's a message worth driving home as we continue to weave AI deeper into our daily lives.
Agreed. Let's keep championing the idea of active engagement over passive acceptance. Thanks for this insightful chat.
Thanks indeed. It's been a great discussion on the importance of maintaining our critical faculties in this rapidly evolving tech landscape.